Autopsy doctors of Reddit, what was the biggest revelation you had to a person's death after you carried out the procedure? This story circulates every year at my medical school. A body came in with a gunshot wound to the chest. There was no exit wound. They tried to locate the bullet during the autopsy. No success. They'd ended a whole scan, x-ray, or court of the upper chest/abdomen/pelvis. No bullet point. At that point someone said fuck it, let's scan the whole body. Lo and behold, the bullet was detected in the popliteal fossa area behind the knee. It had embolized/traveled from the heart all the way down the arterial system to the knee, where it got stuck in one of the narrower blood vessels. Training in the medical examiner's office. Elderly woman found dead by herself in her home. There was nothing suspicious, so I was given the case. Took out all the organs, dissected everything, completely unremarkable. I cut through the larynx as a last step before I could clean up and finish the case, and boom, giant piece of chicken lodged in her windpipe. Died choking on dinner. Not a doctor, but a whole body scientific donation technician. I'm the person who dissects cadavers after they were donated. We very commonly would get young cases, normally overdoses. Had a mid-30s female, went to medical examiner prior to donation, but they only did an external evaluation. I went to check her genitals to see if I could palpate a uterus. Found a condom full of pills. Similar to most, the body became a crime scene and we couldn't touch her. When we finally were able to continue, they asked us to photograph the pills to send to the examiner's office. They were mostly Advil and Zyrtec, easily one of the weirdest things I've ever found. My wife is a pathologist assistant, and during her schooling carried out the autopsy of a newborn that died minutes after birth. The mother was desperate for a child and had a history of multiple miscarriages at different terms. This was her first time making it full term and all prenatal checkups revealed no problems. The delivery was difficult but successful, and baby was alive for a short time. Skip to autopsy. All signs point to baby being fully developed. Get to the abdominal cavity and the liver is lacerated and hemorrhage everywhere. During the difficult delivery, the resident used too much force with a forceps to pull the baby out. The ruptured liver that caused the baby to bleed out internally. Wife was enthusiastic about autopsy up to this point, now has no interest. Sheep farmer. I have to know how to do a necropsy for when something dies to know if it's something that could spread. Had a ewe fall over dead after losing a ton of weight and after treating her for everything under the sun. She would gasp for air and struggle to breathe, but antibiotics, steroids and anti-inflammatory drugs didn't touch it. She finally passed away and I cut her open to see what the hell happened, fully expecting to see her lungs riddled with shit. Her heart was 5 times the normal size and hard as a river stone. My guess is she'd had that issue her whole life and it didn't kill her until she was 2. Forensic pathologist here. To come to mind, I had just moved back to my home state where family lives. Get a case with a man with a distinctive last name in the family tree. I put a text out to my mom to see if we were related, but before she texted back I pulled the sheet back and already knew he looked like me. It was my great uncle. Get a case where it's a house fire death. On exam he's got multiple textbook stab and incised wounds. I spend the next 30 minutes getting gaslighted, quizzed by PD about a usual, because they thought this was a straightforward house fire. Unfun fact, fire's not an uncommon way for people to try to conceal a homicide. Not mine, but a doctor I used to work with. Back when he was in school, he would do his cadaver labs really late at night to many people during the day. One time it was really late, around 2 AM. He was listening to his lecture on his headphones and he saw the cadaver's arm move/twitch. He thought it was just his mind playing tricks on him. Then he saw it again. Proceeded to run away in a panic. He told a few of his classmates what happened, but nobody believed him. Next day they had a group cadaver lab with the same cadaver. The arm twitched yet again. The professor did some digging, and it turns out the patient's pacemaker was still fully functional and occasionally fired, causing the arm twitch. He was so relieved. He thought there was a zombie in there. Masters in forensic pathology here. You'd be surprised to know the number of people that have life-threatening issues that never went diagnosed and that they didn't die from. Seen an older guy who died of pneumonia in hospital. On autopsy the guy had both an enlarged heart and a couple of medium-sized aneurysms in the brain. Another guy in his 70s apparently came into the and had chest pain, then died shortly after. Dies of a heart attack, but also had cancer. In less natural circumstances though, saw a guy who had been shot in the head a couple of times. 3 definite entries and a blown out skull, but police only found 1 bullet. Couldn't find the other bullet in his head at all. Assumed the police missed it. Went on as normal with the autopsy until we got to the chest cavity. The other bullet was just chilling beside his lung. Turns out it entered the skull, hit the inside, ricocheted down his neck, and into the chest. That was pretty wild. Not exactly an autopsy per se, but it was a patient found unresponsive, with CPR in progress by EMS. The man was clearly homeless. Based on his appearance and smell, he reportedly had not been seen for several days by his friends, and was eventually found behind a fast food restaurant dumpster. We were briefly able to get a pulse back, and when the nurse cut his pants off to place a catheter we saw the cause. He had fashioned some sort of makeshift cock ring out of the neck of a plastic bottle. It was way too tight and completely cut off the circulation. The penis was fully black and necrotic. I did a bedside ultrasound and found his abdomen full of free fluid, which is bad. Most likely his bladder had ruptured from being unable to urinate for days. His lab suggested he was in septic shock and full-blown renal failure as well. He did not survive much longer than that. Edit. I remembered another one. In my final year of training we had a cadaver lab to practice advanced airway management techniques. For instance, difficult intubation, cricothyroidotomy, etc. While I was helping an intern do a basic intubation, she commented the tube wouldn't pass. I think she has some kind of growth or mass in her airway. I took a look, asked for some forceps, and pulled a half-eaten hot dog out of her larynx. It of course had been embalmed along with the rest of her. Cause of death identified. My dad used to perform autopsies. His best story was that they were brought a body that has no real indication of any issues. After examining the body, the only thing of note was that there was blood coming out of the guy's rectum. They begin the autopsy and the guy's organs are completely liquefied, and the body cavity is filled with lead shot. It became apparent really quickly that someone had shoved a shotgun up his ass and pulled the trigger. This was in the 70s, and I still have to wonder what this guy did to piss someone off enough to get a shotgun up his ass. While in medical school, we had to observe an autopsy and could assist. One of the lectures was to observe forehead trauma. You do this by hitting the skull with a hard object, scissor or the like. A hollow sound is normal, but a dull sound indicates trauma. One of the other students did this exam and found a dull sound. The coroner had not yet himself examined the person and was very surprised, as he had not been informed by the police of head trauma. They then continued to examine the head, and they found a gunshot wound through the skull. All of a sudden the person was a crime scene, and they had to call the police again and leave the person as into shade as possible. I believe it was later confirmed that the person had shot himself, but it could have been a murder. Thanks for watching. Subscribe or else you will have eternal bad luck.